All right, Todd Fuhrman is with bettheboardpodcast.com, bettheboardpodcast.com as we continue from the rabbit hole on the strip here in Tuscaloosa with our friends at Bud Light. What is up, Fuhrman? Welcome in today. Hope you're doing well.
I'm doing well, gentlemen. Hopefully you guys are the magic elixir for an Alabama season that's quickly getting off the rails in the week of what transpired last weekend in Knoxville.
The last time we did the show from this stage, Fuhrman, Alabama played the Georgia Bulldogs. So I'll let you answer that question if we're the magic elixir or not.
You know what? They may have to send you guys a private jet every single Saturday from here through the end of the regular season, knowing that Alabama will need to win out, most likely finish 10-2 to have a chance to get into the college football playoff. That's for sure.
All right, let's start with the. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Jim.
I was just going to ask you, Furman, is Alabama anywhere in this schedule that you didn't think they would be? Didn't you think they'd have 2 losses right now? I know I did. I just thought it'd be Georgia and Tennessee.
You know, that's kind of my takeaway. But the difference being, I think if you're going to lose to Georgia and Tennessee, the resume looks substantially better than having a loss against Vanderbilt, even for as well as the Commodores have played. So strength of schedule will no doubt play a major role when we're trying to assess all the teams in the SEC with an unbalanced schedule. And now LSU playing a little bit better than I think most of us anticipated. There are still opportunities for Alabama to be able to make a statement, but the margin for error has completely gone out the window, at least as far as I see it from this point going forward.
So as far as Alabama and Missouri goes, this was around 13 and a half somewhere until the availability reports started coming out. And then you started seeing the leading rusher for the Tigers and the starting quarterback for the Tigers listed as doubtful. So I'll ask you from the Vegas point of view, is there any expectation you could see either one of those guys? And where do you see the Alabama-Missouri game going?
You know, this almost feels like a double whammy, not to come all the way back and throw salt in the wounds for Auburn fans, that Brady Cook ends up coming into the fourth quarter to win that game for Missouri, helping them erase a 2-touchdown deficit, and then gets ruled out the following week for Missouri's trip to Tuscaloosa. You mentioned the injury reports for both of those players, and if the betting market is any indication, and we always talk about it being the ultimate model of efficiency, I would be stunned if Brady Cook was a surprise start for Missouri. Nate Noel doesn't move the needle quite as much, given how he shared some of the responsibilities with Marcus Carroll. But at the same time, we're talking about cluster injuries. For a Missouri offense that's really lacked some of that big play potential, we got glimpses of the Drew Pine experience that we'd seen at Arizona State and Notre Dame, and not the kind of quarterback to lean into the skill set of a Theo Weiss or Luther Burden. So part of the reason that you've seen Alabama balloon up through that 2-touchdown threshold out to 17, and also see under money as well from 55 down to that 51 and a half range. And I'd be more inclined, if I was getting involved in this game late, to maybe look under the total. I think this is a manageable opponent for Alabama defensively, and quite frankly, this Tide offense that's underwhelmed in recent weeks, I'm not sure we wave a magic wand and suddenly regain some of that explosive flair that we've seen in flashes so far this season.
Furman, I think there's some sharps that are trying to fade this Indiana team. And look, Taven Jackson will get the start, the backup quarterback. He looked really good in relief after Rourke went out with the thumb injury last week against Nebraska. But you just look at Kirk Cignetti, and, he was on SVP last night, so confident. This dude is 14-3 against the number his last 17 games coached. The number's down to 5.5. Dangerous spot with Washington coming off the bye. But this is one of those that I just don't even know if I want to mess with Indiana. I sure as hell don't want to fade them right now.
And I'm kind of with you here. I think it's one of those things that everybody wants to have that scalp in terms of when Indiana finally falters from an ATS perspective, something that they haven't done since their season opener against FIU. People want to claim that they were on the right side when Indiana had their regression. But this isn't a game for me either. And while you dig into some of Washington's underlying metrics, this team's significantly better, in my opinion, than what their record suggests. The problem when you watch Washington on a week-in, week-out basis, they just don't do the little things it takes to win a game that's as buttoned up against an opponent like Indiana. You mentioned Kurt Cignetti, and he just has covered numbers, not through his first season in Bloomington, but something he did extensively at JMU and other stops along the way. Yes, it's a downgrade from Curtis Work to Taven Jackson, and maybe the market hasn't built in enough of that. But at the same time, I don't have enough confidence in Jed Fish's bunch to go in there and essentially, compete to win this game outright now with the price coming down from 7.5 where it was early in the week, now into no man's land at 5.5 and 6. The one thing I will say is books will no doubt find themselves donning their purple early in the morning, rooting for Washington to find a way inside this number.
Listen, much like real life, people talk shit about the U.S. Army and U.S. Navy around the world until they show up and kick your ass.
A lot like football, yes.
Here comes Navy and Notre Dame. Nobody's giving Navy respect. Do they have a chance to go in and kick Notre Dame's ass?
I think you're coming at it from the wrong angle, Dunaway, because if you look at the betting market, the general public is giving Navy probably too much credit. Spoke to a couple of bookmakers, both offshore and locally, and they said about 3 out of every 4 tickets in this game coming in on the American Patriots, donning the red, white, and blue in terms of Navy, yet the number continues to leak closer to that 2-touchdown number. Normally, Navy and Army can sneak up on Notre Dame when they're flying under the radar. Not going to be the case with an undefeated Navy side. And the last time these programs met back in 2019 when both were nationally ranked, when Notre Dame closed as a 7-point favorite, they had that number covered by the end of the first quarter en route to a 52-20 win. Blake Horvath and what's gone on at Navy, absolutely incredible. Brian Newberry has this offense humming. But you look at the strength of schedule, both that they face from an offensive standpoint and defensive standpoint. This is a massive step up in class. And while Notre Dame's not always a team that leaves you brimming with confidence in terms of winning by margin, we've seen this team a little bit more dynamic offensively in recent weeks. I mean, they got down 7-0 to Stanford, rattled off 42 unanswered, found a way to cover comfortably last weekend against Georgia Tech. And I think this is actually a buy low opportunity. Spoken to some of the sharpest guys in the game when it comes to power numbers, and this is the single biggest disparity on the board this week. A lot of guys making this number 18 to 19, so it's rare to see a number nearly a full touchdown off. It's a lay it or don't play it scenario with the favorite here.
But, I mean, if we went to war with any singular nation in the world, Army and Navy would be favored, right? There's no nation in this world that would be favored over our military.
That is a distinct possibility, although watching the Air Force Academy try and perform defensively so far this year, I'm a little bit concerned about other nations around the world having a little bit of an edge up on us from aerial attack standpoint.
You know the old saying, don't you, for the Marines, like the Army's bad, the Navy's worse, and the Air Force is barely on our side. That's what the Marines say about the Air Force. So there you go.
And unfortunately for Air Force football fans, they have been the dominant program in the Commanders-in-Chief rivalry. Not exactly the case so far this season.
Todd Fuhrman is with us. BetTheBoardPodcast.com is where you get all the plays. He's on the JohnstonRVCenter.com hotline as we continue from the rabbit hole in Tuscaloosa on the Strip. I want to ask you about Auburn and Kentucky. This number is all the way down to 1.5. Kentucky is clinging to a 1.5-point favorite, clinging on as a 1.5-point favorite there in Lexington. Both these teams, Fuhrman, have played a different kind of bad football. Kentucky's has just been stinky bad lately, and Auburn is just creating ways to lose. But both these teams are in desperate need of a win.
Oh, for sure. And I think you look at the upcoming schedules for both of these programs. You lose on Saturday, getting bowl eligible is going to be extremely difficult for both the Wildcats and the Tigers. Last week, I'll admit, guys, I backed Kentucky plus 2.5 on the road in Gainesville. Watched them close a 2-point favorite in that spot. And a bounce here, a bounce there. Maybe Kentucky was a little bit more competitive, but clearly wasn't up to the task. And I have some major concerns about Brock Vandegrift and his ability to stretch the field. But on the flip side for Auburn, what has this Tigers team done to leave anyone brimming with confidence? The defense may be a little bit underrated. Offensively, they leave a lot to be desired. And quite frankly, when I look at a game like this, it feels like trying to catch a falling knife with both of these programs. Respect the money that's coming on Auburn, but it ain't getting my money this coming Saturday in Lexington.
The Rams were one of those games last night. I think if you're out there wagering, you circle that game. And I think you get one of those tomorrow in Orlando. And watching BYU give up 269 rushing yards last Friday night to Oklahoma State, they survived that game. Now you take on a Central Florida team that averages over 280 rushing yards. You've got R.J. Harvey, now Ja'Kurrie Brown, and they're laying 2.5 against number 11 and undefeated 7-0 BYU. I'm going to assume that you're all over the Knights here.
That would be correct. Grabbed 2 with the Knights earlier in the week before the line move. We actually gave out UCF as our best bet on the Bet the Board podcast on Wednesday at a pick'em. A little bit surprised to see this number continue to move. Would not be shocked, though, if we saw a little bit of BYU buyback, knowing this will be one of the more public sides. But you mentioned it, LTU. When you look at the matchup here, and BYU struggled immensely to try and contain Oklahoma State's mobile quarterback before Garrett Rangel was lost in that game, I think it's a perfect blueprint for Ja'Kurrie Brown, R.J. Harvey, and even to get Kobe Hudson involved in the passing game to take advantage of this matchup. This is a BYU team that deserves a world of credit. They came into the year 150-1 long shots to win the Big 12, very much in control of their own destiny. But the heat, the humidity, and UCF getting a little bit of a wake-up call, taking Iowa State to the mat last week, I think infuses this team with some confidence. So I'm right there with you. I think you can find a cheap money line. It's definitely the home favorite or pass in this spot, as Gus Malzahn and the boys really need that resume-building win for what's been a disappointing season so far in Orlando.
Hey, listen, no two ways about it last week. Nebraska did not show up against Indiana and Bloomington. Now they play Ohio State, big noon kickoff, 11 o'clock on Fox. Can we expect anything different from Nebraska this week? Can they challenge the Buckeyes?
I don't think challenge is the right word. And when you look at the result, it's one thing going into Bloomington and losing a game. It's another when you get absolutely annihilated to the tune of 56-7. And quite frankly, I wasn't sure if Indiana was ready for the giant target on their back. Kirk Cinetti and company no doubt answered the bell. And I think this is a bigger indictment of Nebraska being buttoned up. The other questions and storylines starting to swirl around Lincoln is the overall health of Dylan Raiola. Limped off the field in that spot, and the people I've spoken to said it's a lower body injury that's kind of hampered some of his mechanics in recent weeks. The problem here for Ohio State, even coming off of the bye, asking them to win by 4 touchdowns in this spot, is a look-ahead game that they have on deck against Penn State. This could be a spot where Ryan Day lets the boys loose for the first half. They're up 3 touchdowns and maybe calls off the Dogs, knowing that their showdown against Penn State will go a long way in the Big Ten playoff race and the potential to get to the conference championship game. But I want no part of Nebraska. I just haven't seen it from this team, and I'm not confident that they're able to keep this game competitive in Columbus.
You know, I had Georgia this past Saturday. I think you probably did as well against Texas. Now Texas goes to Nashville to take on a Vanderbilt team that is catching 18. And I don't know. I would play Vanderbilt here because it seems like a team that won't get blown out. Obviously, Texas has got the much better roster. I just wonder where Texas is mentally rolling into this game after getting physically whipped at home last week.
You know, these are the big questions, too, because from a pure power number standpoint, I don't make Texas an 18-point favorite in this game. I'm closer to that 3-touchdown threshold. But you do have to account for style of play. And right now, Vanderbilt is the closest thing that the SEC has to a service academy, the way that they've gone out there and performed. You look at what the New Mexico State influx has done for this program. Tim Beck, the offensive coordinator, Diego Pavia, giving this team a level of confidence. Eli Stowers continuing to bolster his draft stock at the tight end position, and Jerry Kill as one of their analysts. Texas also dealing with some injuries. Isaiah Bond officially listed as doubtful. We know he is the field stretcher on that offensive side. They're banged up at the safety position with Andrew Makuba, not expected to play as they want to err on the side of caution. And Texas also lost one of their other starting safeties in the Red River rivalry game against Oklahoma. Sidewise, I can't quite get there with Vandy. I think the correlated angle, if you want to get tangled up in this one, would be to try and go under the total. I think Vandy's going to try and take the air out of the ball. I think Texas's defense will be the best of all 4 units that we'll see on full display. And it wouldn't shock me at all, guys, if we were talking about this game 28-14, 28-17, somewhere in that vein.
Fuhrman, am I wrong that this LSU and Texas A&M line has plummeted overnight? Am I just not paying close enough attention? It's down to 1. A&M is only favored 1 over LSU.
No, you have been paying attention. The big move, though, came in early in the week where we saw A&M a 3.5-point home favorite in this game. Saw it taken down to 2.5. Doesn't take as much money, even though the Thursday and Friday moves when limits raise are always worth paying attention to. And you've seen LSU get another wave of support from 2.5 now down to 1. The big question for A&M along the offensive line, Chase Pasantis left the game last week against Mississippi State. I don't expect him to be out there, and that's a key cog along that offensive front. Connor Wegman, also an X factor for this A&M offense, wasn't good last week at all. You know, had Coach Elko calling him out, questioning some of the decision-making and some of the capabilities. The other area that I have concerns with A&M is, do they have the receivers able to test that LSU secondary, which is one of their bigger question marks and weaknesses. The other thing for LSU that I think has gone unnoticed in recent weeks, how much better this defense has played since Harold Perkins was out for the season. Whit Weeks has more or less been a heat-seeking missile for this team on the defensive side, 18 tackles against the Rebels. And this is an LSU offensive line that if they can protect Garrett Nussmeier, the weakness of this A&M defense is their secondary. Haven't gotten involved in this game, won't be on a side, but am mildly intrigued to go under the total at 54.5, 55.
Was that an F1 car in the background?
It sounded like it.
You know, every now and again when I'm not in the home office, I can't control some of the ancillary sounds. But no, we do not have F1 practice out here yet, Dunaway. You're going to have to wait another month for that.
Okay, because I'm coming out Tuesday night. I'm out there Tuesday night through Sunday night, and I'm told they're already starting to lay the track down a little bit, right?
The track is officially starting to be laid down, and they will also look to do a repave as well to make sure that they can have the Las Vegas Strip in pristine condition for the festivities that'll take place a week before Thanksgiving.
All right. Before you go, a couple things. Number one, for whatever reason, when we are here at the Rabbit Hole, one of the fraternities that likes to join us, they're big Louisville guys, So they want to put the L's up, boys. Put the L's up. They want us to ask you about Louisville tonight against Boston College. What you got on Louisville and BC tonight?
They may not love my initial inclination here, but I think BC is a live underdog catching 7.5. This is a Louisville team over the last couple of weeks that has played extremely well, but come up just short in some big games. I wonder what they have left in the tank to go out there and win by margin. This is also a BC team, probably a little bit of an underrated home field advantage just because it's so quirky up there in Chestnut Hill. Cullen Lacey electing to opt out to maintain his eligibility, never something that has me extremely confident about the current dynamic in the locker room. And while I won't necessarily call for BC to win outright, Louisville has struggled with mobile quarterbacks. So look for Thomas Castellanos, his legs and arm to cause some problems here. I actually like BC plus a 7.5.
Oh, they like BC.
Let me quote the crowd for you in case you missed it, Fuhrman. They said, "What the hell, Fuhrman?"
Yeah.
I'm sure you sanitize that on some level as well.
You're just trying to help out, man.
I know you're just giving them your opinion. Before you go, your under the radar play, Fuhrman. You are 5-0. We are told from Keith. He's played it every week. Oh, in fact, I need to reach out to you, Fuhrman. Keith has won so much. This is no joke. He emailed the show and he said he will be happy to donate each week to your charity of choice that you win the under the radar pick, but you've done so well for him on it. So you just text me, or you can let me know right now what your charity of choice is, and he'll send a donation.
Yeah, tell Keith thank you. And that's actually where I am right now, one of the local animal shelters. So I'm happy to share that information and appreciate Keith's generosity there with all of our under the radar winners. So I'll pass along that information. And let's hope we can stay hot in that regard. So we're going to go out to Laramie, Wyoming this week, guys, for a game that I know, Dunaway, you had circled. The showdown between Utah State and Wyoming up there.
Yes.
Weather forecast a little bit more favorable for this time of year. Winds should be relatively mild in that 7 to 15 mile an hour window. I like the game over the total at 57. When you look at Utah State, this team has been defense optional all year, and while Wyoming's offense doesn't scare anybody, this is a major step down in class. And you look at what Wyoming has done at home against inferior defenses, hung 24 on San Diego State, scored 30 against Air Force, and I think if the Pokes can get to 27, Utah State can do the rest. So we'll go over the total in Utah State and Wyoming at 57. I think we could be talking about this game playing into the high 60s, low 70s.
All right. Thank you, Fuhrman. BetTheBoardPodcast.com. Enjoy the weekend, buddy. We'll talk to you next Friday.